I am presenting Union Gospel Press's Sunday School Lesson number 6, Resurrection Sunday, April 5th, 2026. The lesson is entitled, Jesus Overcomes the Grave. Lesson text comes from Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. Related scriptures are Matthew 28, 1 through 10, Luke 24, 1 through 11, Mark 14, 26 through 28, Acts 2, 22 through 32, Revelations 1, 17 through 18. The place is Jerusalem. The time is between 26 and 30 AD. Jesus' death was a brutal end to the hopes of his disciples. They had endured a long Sabbath just sitting with the knowledge of his death. Then the greatest reversal in all of history occurred. Some of Jesus' female followers went to the tomb where they discovered it was empty. The empty tomb is the foundation of our faith. Because of Jesus' resurrection, we know that God accepted Jesus' sacrifice and has taken his wrath away from all who trust in Jesus. Today's aim, facts. To know what Mark wrote about the women's encounter at the empty tomb. Principle. To understand that Jesus rose from the dead and that by doing so, he made a way from death to life for all who trust in him. Application. To live in hope of our resurrection, rejoicing in the life Jesus gives us. Illustrating the lesson. Jesus' resurrection is life-changing for all who believe in him. Because he died and rose again, all Christians have hope for their resurrection someday. Practical points. 1. Sincere devotion to Christ is often shown in small tasks. Mark 16, 1. 2. Serving Christ often happens at inconvenient times, verse 2. 3. Obstacles may hinder our attempts at serving God, verse 3. 4. Obstacles are often removed without our knowledge of how God did it, verse 4. 5. Preparing for unexpected events when serving the Lord, verse 5. 6. What he declares, God will bring to pass, verse 6. 7. God uses devoted disciples to deliver his message, verse 7. 8. Fear may overcome even the most dedicated disciples, verse 8. Golden text. And he saith unto them, Be not affrighted. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. Mark 16:6. Today we have 4 lesson outlines. The first is Journey to the Tomb, Mark 16, 1 through 3. The second is Encounter with the Messenger, Mark 16, 4 through 6. The third is Message of Resurrection, Mark 16, 7. And the fourth is Reaction to the Message, Mark 16, 8. Introduction. Turning our attention to the narrative of Mark 16, 1 through 8, we walk alongside Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome in the dim light of early dawn. Their journey to the tomb is a testament to the depth of their devotion, a silent procession fueled by love and a profound sense of duty. In the quiet moments before the world awoke, the mournful women embodied the essence of faithfulness, carrying with them the spices they had prepared to anoint the body of Jesus. Their actions speak to a love that did not waver in the face of death, a devotion that persisted even in the deepest sorrow. Their journey was more than a final act of devotion. It was the prelude to a revelation that would forever alter the course of history. As the faithful women approached the tomb, they found not the fatality of death, but the promise of life eternal. This moment of discovery beckons us to look beyond the tombs of our own despair and find the hope that rolls away stones, the love that conquers death. Journey to the tomb, Mark 16:1. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome had brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. Verse 2. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. Verse 3. And they said among themselves, who shall roll us away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? As we read the story of the faithful women who are reminded of the profound devotion and preparedness that Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome displayed in their darkest hour. Before the first light of dawn had even broken, both literally and metaphorically, these women set out with a purpose that speaks volumes about their unwavering love and devotion. Each woman in the resurrection story has a unique background and significance within the story. Mary Magdalene was known for her close following of Jesus during his ministry. She is notably mentioned as one whom Jesus healed, casting 7 demons out of her and marking her as a significant witness to his power and mercy, Luke 8:2. Another figure is Mary, the mother of James. Mary is often identified as one of the women who followed Jesus and ministered to him following his travels, showcasing the role of women as crucial supporters and followers. Salome is less frequently noted in the Gospels, but is understood to be among the women who followed Jesus from Galilee, providing for him out of their resources, Mark 15:40-41, Matthew 27:55-56. Her presence at the tomb further emphasizes the dedicated following of women in Jesus' life and ministry. Their devotion should serve as an example of faithful ministry for every believer. The significance of the women coming to the tomb on the first day of the week has meaning. First, it marked the end of the Sabbath, allowing them to perform the act of atoning Jesus' body according to Jewish customs. The Sabbath restrictions had prevented them from buying and preparing the spices until after it had ended. This timing underscores the tradition from the Jewish Sabbath to the first day of the week, highlighting the dawn of a new era with the resurrection of Jesus. Moreover, the timing aligns with the 3 prophecies Jesus gave that he rose after 3 days. Mark 8:31-33, 9:31-33, 10:30-32. Assuming a Jewish understanding of any part of a day counting as a full day, Jesus was in the grave during parts of 3 days and rose on the 3rd day, verse 31. Anointing the dead was a Jewish practice rooted in respect and devotion. It gave due recognition to the fact that God created the human body in glory. The burial ritual served as a final act of love and care for the deceased. The ritual involved washing the body and anointing it with spices and perfumes to honor the dead and offset the smell of decay. After Jesus' crucifixion, this tradition was intended to be carried out by several women who followed Jesus. They brought spices after the Sabbath to anoint Jesus' body, demonstrating their continued devotion even after his death. The act of preparing spices for the anointing was indicative of their love and respect for Jesus, as well as their adherence to Jewish burial customs of the time. In their grief, the women showed an incredible preparedness to serve. Anointing and preparing the body was not a simple task. It was a labor of love, a sacred duty that they were determined to fulfill despite the immense sorrow they were undoubtedly feeling. Their preparedness showed their faithfulness, although they did not understand Jesus' claim that he would rise again from the dead. The women's actions in those moments of deep sorrow remind us of the importance of serving faithfully. It is easy to serve or to love when the conditions are right, when the sun is shining and our spirits are high. The true measure of devotion is found in our willingness to serve even when our hearts are heavy. The night is at its darkest and the pain feels insurmountable. The story of these faithful women challenges us to reflect on our own lives. As we prepare to serve, to love, and to remain devoted, even in the face of loss or despair. Their journey to the tomb that early morning is a reminder that our service and devotion are needed most in the darkest times. Encounter with the messenger, verse 4. And when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. Verse 5. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. Verse 6. And he saith unto them, Be not affrighted. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold where they lay him. The women's unexpected discovery of an empty tomb marked the beginning of a miraculous revelation and a radiantly different trajectory for the whole human race. Instead of finding a tomb sealed in death, they found an opening, an invitation to witness something beyond their human comprehensions. The stone rolled away is not just a physical reality. It symbolizes the shattering of the barriers between life and death, between hopelessness and eternal promise, between Jesus' disgrace on the cross and his heavenly vindication. Usually, a round rock was hewed to cover a tomb. The rock would require several strong individuals to move it, as these rocks could weigh over 1,000 pounds. It would have been difficult for any three people to move such a rock. As the three women entered the tomb, their confusion and mourning were met with a more astounding revelation. Instead of a dead body, they saw a young man in a white robe. We can assume this messenger was an angel, while other gospel accounts tell us directly that the messenger was an angel. Mark's gospel simply describes the messenger as dressed in a white robe. Matthew 16:5, Mark 16:5, Matthew 28:2-3. Perhaps Mark's depiction emphasizes the message itself rather than the messenger. Either way, the message shocked the women. The words of the messenger may intrigue us. The messenger confirmed that Jesus, whom they were seeking, was not there, but he had been raised from the dead. The messenger even offered to show them the place where Jesus had lain. He possibly pointed out the space because the tomb was dark. After all, the women were peering into the tomb in the early morning. In the time of Jesus, tombs were typically hewed out of rock and consisted of a short entranceway leading into one or more burial chambers. They were shallow, bench-shaped rooms cut into the rock with the arch extending over the resting place, allowing the entire body to be visible. This design facilitated the visibility of the body, perhaps for visitation or mourning purposes. The way the tomb was cut forced the individual to look down and peer inside. Jesus was not hiding in the corner or in some dark corner of the tomb, the messenger ensured that they knew he was not there. Message of resurrection, verse 7. But go your way, tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him, and he said as he said unto you. Then the messenger redirected their attention. He specifically told them to go to the disciples and Peter. We may wonder why the messenger specifically mentioned Peter. Peter had failed Jesus a number of times, even to the point that Peter denied being a disciple and follower of Jesus. 14:66 through 72. Perhaps Peter felt like a failure and was wondering whether God could ever use him again. The messenger may have specifically mentioned Peter's name to ensure that Peter knew that Jesus wanted to see him. Jesus' love extended beyond Peter's failure and ensured that he was invited back into the group of followers. The angelic message transformed everything. The women who had come to the tomb enveloped in sorrow were now the first bearers of the greatest news humanity had ever received. The resurrection of Jesus is not just a miraculous event. It is the cornerstone of Christian faith, the assurance of the hope of all believers and the foundation of their purpose. In that moment, the three women's confusion and mourning were turned into a mission. They were given a purpose that transcended their initial intent to honor Jesus with spices. They were to share the news of Christ's victory over death and heavenly vindication. The prodigious task required God-empowered courage and faith. One can hardly imagine the emotions they were going through the entire weekend of the crucifixion and resurrection. Most of Jesus' followers had fled. Judas had hung himself. Peter had denied Jesus. The disciples had all dispersed and were in hiding. The women were probably scared, going to the tomb without escort. Of all of Jesus' many followers, only these three women decided to go to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body, doing so out of respect and devotion for their teacher and friend. Let us not overlook their initial response. They fled from the tomb trembling and bewildered with a mix of fear and amazement gripping their hearts. Their reactions was probably one of shock, but perhaps also informed and strengthened by a reconciliation of the promises Jesus had made. Could he have truly been resurrected just as he said? Did God's purposes for a Messiah actually come to fulfillment? Such reactions and questions are human, a testament to the overwhelming nature of encountering the divine. Despite their fear, the women were given the mission to go and tell the disciples that Jesus had risen. This commission is significant for several reasons. First, it dramatically underscores the pivotal role of women as the first witnesses of the resurrection. They were the first to proclaim Messiah's victory over death. As such, these women challenged cultural norms of the time that often diminished the testimony of women. In the first century, women were not allowed equal rights as men. A woman needed some covering or protection from a man who would claim her as part of his household. Because of this, widows were especially vulnerable. The testimony of women was usually not even allowed in court. For the messenger to commission women to go tell the disciples about the resurrection was very countercultural in that day. Second, the women's testimony highlights the role of every believer in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. The commission to go and tell is not just for the women at the tomb. It extends to all who have encountered the risen Lord. The mission in our lesson, born out of an encounter with the miraculous, transforms fear into purpose and sent the women on a journey to share the incredible news of the resurrection. Reaction to the message, verse 8. And they went out quickly and fled from the sepulchre, for they trembled and were amazed. Neither said they anything to any man, for they were afraid. The messenger explained to the women the unique events that had happened at the tomb. The stone was rolled away, and their Messiah and their master, who was crucified, had risen from the dead. The young man in the white robe also gave them a task. They were to deliver the good news to the disciples and Peter. Moreover, he risen Jesus was going to Galilee, and that they would see him there. Such news was beyond their ken, and the women's response was not one of faith. They remained silent, at least initially, about what they saw and heard. Their fearful response was consistent with the character and actions of the disciples elsewhere in Mark's gospel. The disciples were prone to misunderstanding Jesus. When he told a parable, the disciples did not understand its meaning for 13. And after Jesus fed the 5,000 and walked on water, Mark described the disciples as being terrified, unable to understand, and having hard hearts. 6:45-52. Mark laid the charge of not understanding at the disciples' feet at other times as well. 18:17-21. Fear, that unflattering quality the women at the tomb exuded in Mark 16:8 appears frequently throughout Mark's gospel. Herod, no friend of God, was afraid of John. 6:20. The religious leaders were afraid of Jesus, not because they understood who he was, but because they feared the people who were enthralled by Jesus' teaching. 11:18, 32, 12:12. The disciples were afflicted by fear as well. The fear of their risen Lord coincided with their misunderstanding and lack of faith. When Jesus calmed the storm, cast out demons, and walked on water, the disciples were afraid. 441, 515, 650. And when he told them about his impending death and resurrection, they did not understand and were afraid to ask questions. 9:30-32. At the time of Christ's greatest triumph, after being entrusted with the most important message of all time, the women's initial response was fear, flight, and silence. 16:8. Now the question remains, what are we going to do about Jesus? Are we willing to tell others about the salvation available exclusively through faith in the resurrected Son of God? Questions. 1. What character qualities of the women are emphasized by their visit to the tomb? 2. Why is the presence of each woman at the tomb important? 3. What was important about the timing of the women's arrival at the tomb? 4. What does the women's plan to anoint Christ's body tell us about Jesus? 5. What two astonishing things did the women see at the tomb? 6. What was the messenger's words concerning Jesus? 7. What were the messenger's instructions to the women? 8. Why did the messenger mention Peter by name and not the other disciples? 9. What were the women's initial responses to the instructions? 10. What does Mark's account of the resurrection highlight concerning believers' responsibility with the message? This concludes the Sunday School lesson for Sunday, April 5th, 2026. Thank you for listening. Please remember to click the subscribe tab. God bless.